So good, so good, so good.
New markdowns up to 70% off are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. And that means thousands of can't-miss deals just in time for summer.
The denim section is unreal.
Why do I rack? All the dresses.
I always find something amazing.
Plus, buy it online and pick it up in-store the same day for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
Welcome back to Fine Tooning with Drew Taylor, your one-stop shop when it comes to animation news and commentary. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and Mr. Taylor, whose writings on the industry you can regularly read over on the Wrap, and whose musings on the Mission Impossible movies you can listen to on Light the Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast. He and I are recording this week's show on Sunday, May 4th, and before we get started here, Drew, can we talk about where you're heading next week? Because it would really be disappointing if we weren't able to talk about this.
I think we can say that I'm going. I don't know if I can. Yeah, we can say that I'm going to Pixar this week to check out Elio and, try to get lost coming back from the bathroom as is our style. Yes.
Okay. Got to find out which wing Toy Story 5 is in first.
That's right.
Now, is this a long lead?
It is a long lead, but it's not that long because the movie is coming out very soon. But
yes. Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they want to show. And, you've been to these long lead things before, Jim. They take you through every aspect of production, and
they do.
As soon as I'm able to talk about that, I'll talk about it right here on the show. So yeah,
can't wait. All right, well, anyway, folks, back to May the 4th, which for those of you who observe this pop culture related holiday is of course Star Wars Day, as in May the 4th be with you. And just so you know, in honor of Star Wars Day, Disney Plus has made Tales of the Underworld available for viewing, and this, correct me if I'm wrong, third in the series of Star Wars related miniseries from Lucas Animation, right? Oh, Lucasfilm Animation.
Yes. This is in the same style as the Clone Wars and other Dave Filoni supervised animated output, Bad Batch, Rebels, that kind of thing. Yeah.
There you go. And have we actually seen this? Or?
I watched the first one today. I didn't realize how long they were. Also, I didn't realize how many there were. There's 3 about Saj Ventress, who's like a Sith woman, and then there is 3 about our boy, what is his name? Cad Bane.
Cad Bane, yes. And what Drew is referring to is 6 total, each 15 minutes long. So you're going to need 90 minutes to explore the underworld here. And by the way, as we're talking about Disney Plus, I want to thank all of you who reached out last week in regard to my Yellow Planet problem. For those of you who've forgotten, I had trouble accessing the new exclusive to the streaming service episode of The Simpsons. Whenever I clicked on the banner promoting Yellow Planet, I'd then get directed to a page that listed all of the episodes from the first season of The Simpsons, which just didn't make sense to me. And thanks to a number of folks who very patiently, Drew, walked me through the process of first hammering on the tab that got me to season 37 of The Simpsons, and then scrolling all the way to the bottom, which was where links to all of the Disney Plus exclusive episodes of this long-running animated series were hidden away. And that's why late last week I finally did get to see Yellow Planet, which was fine, if it maybe went a little long with its one joke, which was basically, look what animal we've turned this Simpsons character into. Aren't we clever? Not to be a whiny baby man here, but let's be clear, folks. I know in real life I am, in fact, a whiny baby man. In fact, I've actually had business cards made up that say, Jim Hill, whiny baby man, engage at your own peril. I bet he's about to complain about something. Anyway, my complaint here is that any other time I went to watch anything previously, the Gracie films it created for Disney Plus, the Simpsons shorts like The Force Awakens from its nap, or last December's 2-parter, Oh Come On, All Ye Faithful. All I had to do was click on the banner, and then I was taken straight to whatever this particular piece of media, where it was stored on that streaming service. Just long story short, I am an old dog, people. I am incapable of learning new tricks, especially if these new tricks involve technology. So please, I am begging the powers that be at Disney Plus, don't assume old farts like myself will be able to do things like navigate pull-down menus, because that will only end in tears.
Listen, I couldn't find it for the last one, so I'm now riveted and looking forward to trying to watch this stuff now, Jim. That you've explained this.
There you go. Okay, one last Simpsons-related note, or perhaps rant. If you've ever seen the picture of Homer dressed to go to his junior prom in high school with his horrible powder blue tux and his geeky 70s guy's haircut, this, by the way, is from The Way We Was, episode 12, season 2 of The Simpsons. Much as it pains me to admit it, I literally wore that exact same outfit, a tux with frills that was also powder blue, to my own prom. And back then, I had the exact same haircut as Homer Simpson, which is why I don't understand. 37 years have now gone by, and I have now somehow mutated into Abe Simpson. So I am now literally living that famous quote from Homerpalooza 24th episode of season 7 of The Simpsons, where Grandpa Simpsons is heard to tell his family, I used to be with it, but then they changed what it was, and now what I'm with isn't it anymore, and what it is seems weird and scary, and it'll happen to you. So, all right. So anyway, before I have to step outside and start yelling at clouds, let's take a moment to acknowledge our sponsor, Drew, which is the DVC Rental Store. And if you're already planning your next trip to Walt Disney World, you can save some serious scratch by renting DVC points through the DVC Rental Store. Imagine staying at a deluxe resort for a fraction of the cost. That's a total game changer. And heads up, folks, the DVC Rental Store is currently running a limited time promotion where they're offering the lowest prices of the year, so please check them out at dvcrentalstore.com. Oh, and if you already own or are thinking of joining the Disney Vacation Club, then be sure and check out the DVC resale market. They're the leaders in the secondary market with over 70,000 satisfied members. Whether you're looking to buy or sell your DVC points, they make the process seamless. Okay, this part of the show, Drew, we always pivot back to the past week's domestic box office. So what are your thoughts about the, 76 million projected for Thunderbolts?
Well, I saw that it's right in line with the Eternals opening weekend, which does not fare well. Although I think this one will have legs, and I think ultimately it has a possibility of outgrossing Captain America: Brave New World. It's certainly a much better movie. So, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, as Drew was pointing out, when that Anthony Mackie movie came out in February, that did 88 million over its first 3 days at the box office. But on the other hand, you know, if you factor the box office in with really strong, I think, reviews and audience reaction, a lot of folks seem to be suggesting that Thunderbolts is a return to form for Marvel, and more to the point, off of the post-credit scene, all sorts of folks are excited about seeing Fantastic Four: First Steps, which opens in theaters this July. But also worth noting, further on down the chart, in the number 6 position, which, by the way, exact same spot this animated feature occupied on last week's domestic chart, is The King of Kings. And ticket sales for this animated version of Charles Dickens' The Life of Our Lord currently sit at 57.6 million. And because The King of Kings has earned this much money in North America, and this animated feature was produced in Korea at Mofac Studios. Am I getting that name right? Mofac?
I think so.
Okay. I was intrigued to see this earlier this week, that The King of Kings now has the distinction of being the top grossing Korean film in the United States, and actually surpassing the domestic box office for Bong Joon-ho's Oscar winner Parasite.
Wow.
Which, again, got to remind folks, that was the first non-English language film to ever win Best Picture. That was back in February of 2020. So congrats to the folks at MoFag. That's quite a coup at the North American box office. And speaking of quite a coup, Big City Greens, after 9 seasons on Disney Plus, recently aired its 100th episode. Just last night, in fact, May 3rd, again on Disney Channel. But the beauty of having a podcast that records on a Sunday night and then posts on a Tuesday morning is that Drew and I can now talk up the Disney Plus debut of this particular episode of Big City Greens, which, surprise, surprise, is actually entitled 100 and debuts on Disney Plus tomorrow. By that, I mean the day after this podcast posts, which is Wednesday, May 7th. And there will be more animation-related news in a moment, when we'll then talk about the 4-season renewal for Simpsons, Family Guy, Bob's Burger, and American Dad, as well as which stage version of a Disney animated musical is getting revived and hitting the road soon. But first, this. And we're back. Look, Drew, as somebody who works over the wrap and is knee-deep in this stuff day to day, this is an interesting time to be covering animation, largely because so many of the previous business models that were used in this specific area no longer seem to apply in the current marketplace, which is why we see movers and shakers shaking things up. And case in point, back in May of 2021, it was considered a very big deal that The Simpsons, which was in the middle of its 32nd season at that time, was getting picked up for 2 additional seasons. That pattern repeated itself in January of 2023, when it was revealed that The Simpsons would be renewed for another 2 seasons, which would then carry this long-running series, in fact, to the season we're in the middle of right now, 2004-2025 season. But then, just last month, it was announced, well, not only was The Simpsons being renewed for an additional 4 seasons, which will carry this show through its historic 40th year on television, not to mention raise the total number of Simpsons episodes that will have been produced to over 850. But other long-running animated series produced by now 20th television animation, like Family Guy, Bob's Burgers, and American Dad, were also getting 4-year renewals. So, first of all, what did you make of that, Drew? What did you think?
Well, I mean, the Fox Broadcasting Network is more or less like game shows where people like fall out of buildings, and very iffy sitcom. So I can see why they wanted the content. Mm-hmm. And as we've talked about before, it's just really hard to get a new season of animation back up in terms with securing talent and artists and all that. So they're kind of future proofing both the network and also the franchises that these will feed into the secondary markets, the streaming markets, all of that stuff. And yes, I mean, I've heard that The Simpsons is going to try to make it to the 900th episode by the end of this renewal cycle. And whether that means more episodes on Disney Plus, Jim, the exclusive ones or not, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's very exciting. I mean, it's just when is the next, Big City Greens or whatever that's going to actually generate that many episodes is going to come around? Or is this it? Is this the end of the line?
Well, now where this gets especially interesting is, and forgive me for bringing this up, and I mentioned at the top of the show, I am in fact an old fart. But if think about it, just in the past couple of months, we had Pamela Hayden, the voice actress behind Milhouse Van Houten. And by the way, Pamela's been doing Milhouse since before there was a Simpsons TV show. The first time she voiced that character was for a Butterfinger commercial. But she announced in November of last year, 2024, that she was going to step away from voicing this character for The Simpsons. And the show announced, well, all right, we're going to go ahead and recast. But not to put too fine a point on it, but Dan Castellaneta, the voice of Homer Simpson, is now 67 years old. Again, 1 year older than me. Dan's the same age as Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson. Yeardley Smith, the voice of Lisa Simpson, is actually the young'un of the bunch. She's 60. Hank Azaria is 61, whereas Julie Kovnar, the voice of Marge Simpson, is 74 years old. And, all right, we're going to step into an area that might offend folks here, but, all right, Mel Blanc was still voicing Looney Tunes characters at the age of 81 when he passed away. In July of 1989. In fact, one of his last times doing Daffy Duck was for Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which came out the year previous, 1988.
Wasn't that weird commercial with his son one of the last ones as well?
Oh, yeah. That's
it was for a car or something? What was that?
What Drew is referring to is, I want to say this is Noel Blanc you're talking about.
Yes.
And Mel was basically trying to keep the job in the family. So he was, as part of this car commercial, he was showing off the fact that his son could also do the Looney Tunes character voices. But if we get back to, if you listen to a lot of the stuff that Mel recorded for Warner Brothers in like the last 5 years of his life, it was underpowered. It was raspy. The characters didn't necessarily sound like they did, or the way they used to, or the way they should have. And you got to wonder, would it have been better if somebody at Warner Brothers had made the decision, okay, Mel, time for you to step back, and we're going to get somebody else in here? Because sometimes you do have to make that hard call. And Drew, have we ever talked about what happened on the Tigger movie with Paul Winchell?
I think we have, but
okay.
If you want to tell the folks again.
Okay, well, all right. This is the Tigger movie, came out February of 2000. But it actually went into production back in 1998, and this is when Paul Winchell, who'd been the official voice of Tigger for Disney for 30 years at that point. He first voiced this A.A. Milne character for the studio's Oscar-winning featurette, Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day, which went out at theaters December of 68. Well, anyway, he comes in to do his initial recording session for this film, which at that point is being called Winnie the Pooh and the Family Tree. Anyway, after this recording session, Disney hears how raspy Paul's voice is. He was 75 at the time. And then after paying Paul the full amount that he'd been contracted to work on the Tigger movie, they then told Winchell that his services were no longer required, that they would be recasting this role. And in fact, it was Jim Cummings, the guy who replaced Sterling Holloway as the official voice of Winnie the Pooh. When Holloway, in the late 1980s, and interesting bend on the story, Drew, Disney actually went to Holloway and offered him the opportunity to voice Pooh for The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh show, the thing that they did for ABC, and I think eventually ended up part of the Disney afternoon programming block.
Okay.
And Holloway was like, I don't know if I can do that. And in fact, he took this opportunity to step back as a voice actor and retire from the business. And that would have been, the show went live in 88, so he probably turned down the gig in 87 at some point, and we eventually lose Holloway a few years later, November of 92 at the age of 87. So again, it's going to get interesting in the next few years as the powers that be at 20th Animation go forward again. 16, and that's the other thing to remember. This is 16 seasons of animation, 4 seasons of 4 separate adult animation shows. Simpsons, Family Guy, Bob's Burgers, and American Dad. as the actors who voice these characters age and their voices change, and your voice does change with age. How many of them are going to be like Pamela Hayden or Sterling Holloway and decide on their own to step away, and how many are gonna wind up like Paul Winchell and be forced to give up a part that they love? And another weird little bend on this story. When the news got out, and in fact, what was interesting is, I don't know if it was Paul's people or somebody at Disney who did this, but December of 1998, this made the mainstream media that Paul Winchell was going to be replaced as the voice of Tigger. And the Imagineers heard about this, and they were pissed. And by the way, it was Disney Television Animation that was making this project. Not, I want to be clear here, not Walt Disney Animation Studios, or as it was known back then, Disney Feature Animation. Winnie the Pooh and the Family Tree originally started out life as a home premiere. It was supposed to be the follow-up to that division's hugely successful Pooh's Great Adventure, The Search for Christopher Robin, which hit store shelves back in August of 97 and then sold a record number of VHS tapes. It was only late in production that it was decided to change the now named The Tigger Movie, that it would first be released to theaters in February 2000 and then hit store shelves. But anyway, back to the Imagineers, who again are pissed, and when they hear this news in December of 1998, how Paul Winchell had been treated by Disney Television Animation. And as it turns out, in the same window of time, Drew, they are working on the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh Dark Ride, the replacement for Mr. Toad's Wild Ride at the Magic Kingdom that wasn't due to open till June of the following year, 1999. Which is why WDI made this very big show of inviting Paul Winchell to first come to 1401 Flowers Street, where they then, we want you to reprise your vocal performance of a Tigger, because there will be a scene in this attraction where he sings and dances The Wonderful Thing About Tigger. And so Paul is thrilled to come in and reportedly does a great job at this recording session. It's only at the very end that things take a dark, weird turn, and the Imagineers learn how truly angry and upset Paul Winchell still is with Disney Television Animation that they let him go. And the story that's been told to me is the Idaho team tells Paul, "That was great. We got everything we need. You did an excellent job." And Winchell then requests, well, can you roll tape? I want to do one more thing. And they're like, sure, okay. And so they follow through with his request, and Paul steps up to the mic, and in place of Tigger's standard goodbye, like we all know, TTFN, ta-ta for now, Paul says TTFE, ta-ta forever. Which is a touch dramatic, and not to be that guy, but given that I know Walt Disney himself had selected Golden Horseshoe star Wally Bogue to be the original voice of Tigger, only to then have Bogue replaced as Tigger's voice by Paul Winchell after Walt died, because there were people at Disney Studios who were jealous of how close Walt had been to Wally and got their nose out of joint that Disney would often go out of his way to award Bogue prize roles or involvement in pet projects because Walt got such a big kick out of Wally's work on stage at Disneyland. So I guess for me, it just seems a little weird that Winchell would make such a stink about losing his job as the voice of Tigger when Winchell only got that job after people at Disney then took that voice role away from Wally Bogue. But, what do I know? I'm a whiny baby, man. Anyway, don't believe me? I got a business card that proves it. Anyway, in a moment, we're going to talk about animation and Broadway. But first, this. And we're back. We are going to be talking shortly about animation and Broadway. But, Drew, before we do that, you actually got to see a show in London that has started on Broadway, right? The
Yes.
Stranger Things show?
Yeah, Stranger Things. Yeah, I was in London last October and had an afternoon off, and I just bought a ticket day of, walked over to the theater, had a great time. It's a really, really fun show, and if you're in New York and are looking for something very different, very cool, the stagecraft is amazing. Definitely go see The First Shadow. It did not get like the top Tony nominations, although one of the actors did, but all the technical categories it kind of dominated. So yeah, Jim, you should go. You're actually close enough to go.
You know, it's so interesting you say that because, again, you know, there's a couple of shows down in New York right now that I would enjoy seeing. I mean, for example, we've talked on the show about Boop the Musical, the new stage show built around Max Fleischer's curvy character, tried out in Chicago, November of 2023, excuse me. I did well enough to make the jump to Broadway, opened to the Broadhurst on April 5th, and got decent reviews. And as Drew just mentioned, Tony nominations just came out, and the Boop creative team, given how middling ticket sales for this new musical have been, they were really hoping for a bunch of Tony nominations to help spike interest in the show. Sadly, they only got 3. One for Best Actress. It's Jasmine Amy Rogers. She played the title role in Boop the Musical. And then the show also got nominated for Best Costumes and Best Choreography, which if we're being honest here, I don't know as those are the things that spur people like one Drew Taylor to go on day of and go buy a theater ticket.
Right. Sure. Maybe it'll show up in Universal, though, Jim. Think about that. They could put it in... Isn't there a Toon Lagoon unused amphitheater over there, or no?
There is, which used to have the Rocky and Bullwinkle Pandemonium Circus in it, and every other King Features, cartoon character that they had the rights to. But all right, look, Boop at least got 3 nominations. Where Idina Menzel's Redwood, new musical brought to the stage that, by the way, that Wicked star co-wrote with writer-director Tina Landau, that got none. As a direct result, Redwood, which was originally supposed to run at the Nederlander Theater through at least August 17th of this year, because it got skunked by the Tony Nominating Committee, now shortening its stay at the Nederlander by a full 3 months. Redwood just announced it'll be closing on May 18th, and there are those who are now saying that barring some miracle, which would involve Jasmine Amy Rogers taking home the Tony for Best Actress, which, given that Audra McDonald's performance in the revival of Gypsy seemed to have a lock on that award, it's kind of likely at this point that Boop the Musical will close its doors almost immediately after the Tony Award ceremony this year, which is going to be held June 8th, Radio City Music Hall. I mean, don't get me wrong. It would be great if Boop the Musical got a win in one of the other categories it's nominated for. Choreography, Best Costume. I mean, if it won in Best Costume, well, that would then give Boop the Musical something in common with the original Broadway production of Disney's Beauty and the Beast, which, when it opened back in April of 1994, got 9 Tony nominations and only took home 1 award, and that was for Anne Hold Ward's Amazing Costumes. And I bring up Disney's original stage version of Beauty and the Beast because in honor of the 30th anniversary of that Broadway show, Disney Theatrical is mounting a brand new production of this much-loved musical. In fact, after a week of performances starting next month and late in June at the Proctor Theater main stage in Schenectady, New York, the show will then travel to Chicago, or in July of this year. This production, new production of Disney's Beauty and the Beast, will begin a national tour at the Cadillac Theater. And I mentioned Tina Landau's name a moment ago, who animation fans may remember. She was the director and co-writer of the SpongeBob musical, which bowed at the Palace Theater in New York in 2017, which, by the way, was the home for the original stage version of Disney's Beauty and the Beast for much of its 13-year-long run. Anyway, bring up Ms. Landau, because she has ties to Disney Theatrical as well. In fact, back in May of 2002, Tina was working with the folks who put on the Mouse's shows for Broadway on a new project called When You Wish, which, for lack of a better description, was a Disney jukebox musical. It was a show that was going to be built around the Disney song catalog. And the thinking then among the folks at Disney was they were getting tired of putting on these big elaborate shows like Beauty and the Beast, which, by the way, required 5 full-sized 18-wheelers to haul all of their sets and costumes around whenever the show toured. But anyway, Disney Theatrical workshops Tina's idea and found it wanting. So When You Wish was set aside, and in its place, Disney began developing another jukebox musical, this one entitled On the Record, with the gimmick of this stage show being that the audience is supposedly looking in on a modern-day recording studio as a group of very talented singers and musicians come in and then record a brand new album loaded with Disney classic songs. And this show, while it never actually made it to Broadway, it did tour. It premiered in Cleveland in 2004, and then On the Record spent 36 weeks on the road and was seen by 350,000 theatergoers before it ultimately closes in Denver in mid-2005. And it was around this time that the folks at Disney Theatrical decided, we're just not good at doing jukebox musicals. So, which is why the very next year, 2006, Disney returned to Broadway with the stage version of Tarzan. And then 20 months after Tarzan debuted at the Richard Rodgers Theater, that's when the musical version of Disney's Little Mermaid opened up just down the street at the L'Enfantin in January 2008. Drew, did you get to see either of those when they were in New York? You were in Connecticut at the time, right?
No, I didn't. And I had no idea about this jukebox musical until you brought it up earlier today. And that sounds like a fascinating proposition. I don't know. I've seen precious few of the Disney Broadway musicals. Some of them seem like they were more worthy than others. Let's just say that, right?
Okay, that you're not wrong. But the irony about jukebox musicals is they remain hugely popular. I mean, the Carole King Beautiful or the Billy Joel inspired Moving On. And in fact, the most recent example, Just in Time, a musical biography of crooner Bobby Darin, just opened to rave reviews late last month, April 2025, Circle in the Square Theater. And by the way, Drew, playing the lead in Just in Time, Tony Award winner Jonathan Graff, who Disney fans will know is the voice of Kristoff from all of the Frozen films. Speaking of Frozen, Alex Timber, who is the director of Just in Time, was originally supposed to direct Disney's stage version of Frozen. But in August of 2016, Timbers and Disney Theatrical had a parting of the ways, reportedly over Alex's artistic vision for the stage version of this Academy Award-winning film, which, again, remember, based on the Disney animated film of November 2013. And evidently, Alex was the one who was arguing that, look, people will have seen the movie. We can not end Act 1 without Elsa standing on stage and conjuring up her ice palace. And people have to see giant pieces of plexiglass rising up out of the floor. And the irony is that when Frozen the musical finally opened in New York in March of 2018, it went into the theater that Alex actually insisted they put the show in, the St. James, because evidently the St. James has one of the deepest orchestra pits in all of New York, and the idea was that they could use hydraulic lifts to lift all of these giant pieces of plexi into place, and you would have sat there in the theater and just been wowed as this giant real ice palace formed in front of you. But the interesting thing is Disney Theatrical decided, no, we want a show that can tour. And having giant pieces of plexi, I mean, suddenly we're back to the 5 truckloads of scenery that we had with Beauty and the Beast. So it's like, no, we're not going to do that. But again, Frozen opens up Broadway, May of 2018. Reviews are not especially kind. In fact, a lot of them cite the fact that the show doesn't seem to have a reason for existing. A pretty naked cash grab going on here. I mean, that's the thing. If you look at, I mean, speaking of, you've never even seen Julie Taymor's The Lion King, really?
Never seen The Lion King, Jim. I saw Newsies and I saw Tarzan. Those are the 2. Okay. So neither stuck around very long, but longer than Frozen, perhaps, because
they did. Well, Frozen. In fact, it's so telling that Frozen actually closed up shop March 11th of 2020. I mean, they couldn't even use the excuse of the pandemic. I mean, this show closed before the rest of Broadway went dark. It was like, I guess they're not showing up. Shut it down. But anyway, just want to wish best of luck to all those folks who are right now working in the 30th anniversary of the stage version of Beauty and the Beast, getting ready to do all of its tech and that sort of thing out in Schenectady. In fact, Nancy and I are giving some semi-serious thought, if she's far enough along with her recovery, my bride is having hip replacement surgery later this month, of actually driving out to that part of New York and catching a performance at the Proctor's Theater main stage. And likewise, here's hoping that Boop the Musical pulls off the sort of Tony upset that would then allow this new cartoon-based stage show to continue its run at the Broadhurst. Because again, if possible, Nancy and I would like to see that in person if we could. Of course, given that Mission Impossible 8 will be opening theaters on May 23rd, 3 days after Nancy's procedure, I think it's going to be a while before Nancy and I will get to see Final Reckoning at our local multiplex. But while we're waiting, we will, of course, be listening to Light the Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast, where, with the help of Charles Hood, his equally talented co-host, Drew regularly shares some spectacular behind-the-scenes stories about how the various installments of this acclaimed film series were made. And we are in T-minus country now, right? Less than 3 weeks?
Yes. If you don't hear me on the next podcast, you know where I'll be doing things for Mission Impossible. Yes.
Well, all right.
Yes.
Okay.
We don't know where. We won't say where or when, but there's a number of exciting things coming out as they start the world tour. I think they're starting in Japan and then moving around Europe. They're having the big premiere at the Cannes Film Festival, obviously. So, yes, many things to discuss in the weeks and months ahead, for sure, Jim.
Can't wait.
As we dial into the Final Reckoning. Yes.
All right. And by the way, if you are interested in the sorts of showbiz related behind the scenes stories that Drew does, we have a few podcasts here on Jim Hill Media that work that side of the street as well. We have Disney Dish that I do with Len Testa. We also have the Epic Universal podcast, which I do with Eric Hersey. He produces a lot of the shows here at Jim Hill Media as well. We have Eric's lovely bride, Lauren, who I do the I Want That Too show with. That's our merch show. Brian Gahn and I are due to get a new looking at Lucasfilm out the door, largely on the heels of, the latest pile of Andor episodes, not to mention all the news that came out of Star Wars Celebration in Japan. And let's see. Also want to mention that Manufacturing the Magic, the theme park history podcast that Noah and Shelley Valladolid do is back up and running. In fact, they're cranking out some new episodes. We'll have a new one this coming weekend. And let's see, also want to mention Disney Unpacked. In fact, just today, May the 4th, we loaded up a brand new episode of our Patreon project. And this one is about how the characters from Pixar's Monsters, Inc. film franchise have been used in ride shows and attractions for the Disney parks. And I am right now in the middle of writing next month's Disney Impact, which will cover what happened with the Muppets after the Disney company finally officially acquired the set of characters back in February of 2004. As we close up shop here, folks, please do Drew and I a favor. If you could go over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review, well, not just the show you're listening to right now, Fine Tooning, but light the fuse as well. That helps us find extra ears and eyeballs. And then, of course, there's the social media aspect. Drew, as you begin to travel this coming week and get to go to all sorts of cool places.
All sorts of things. I got to go to Epic Universe too, Jim. It's too much. It's too much. But,
you're killing me.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I refuse to call it X at Drew Tailored, like a tailored shirt. And Jim, let me ask you, where can people find you?
Well, let's see. I can say the X word. You can find me over on X and on Instagram as Jim Hill Media and on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. And I think that's going to do it for this week. So on behalf of Mr. Taylor, thank you for listening to this week's Fine Tuning, and we will be back soon.